Okay, so in the last video, we talked about motivation, or I talked about motivation as a need or desire that energizes behavior towards a particular goal. Sexual intercourse is one behavior that's interesting and again highlights the biopsychosocial model on that dynamic. So, your book talks about sex as being nature's clever way of making people procreate, enabling our species to survive. So, the goal would be procreation for the survival of the species. The need or desire is that survival part. But it's a little bit more complex than that. Part of it is biological, the sexual maturity, the hormones, and things of that related in that category. But there's also the psychological. Are we in stimulating conditions? Do we have these fantasies? And the social cultural foundations of family and social values, religious and personal values, and cultural expectations. We see an interesting or have an interesting lens to consider this with the behaviors in 187, and it gives you an opportunity to think about all the different pieces that feed into sexual motivation and the different pieces for each of the genders. Okay. Similarly, the idea of sexual orientation is our behavior motivated and goal directed towards one particular gender or another, and what are we seeking there is an interesting subtopic within motivation. So it's just referring to our preference for emotional and sexual relationship with individuals of the same sex, of the other sex, and or either sex. The textbook offers a lot of data, which I would encourage you to kind of just think about in terms of here's one perspective on this idea. And then you can think about whether that data, whether those ideas and those perspectives are consistent with or help us understand any more about the characters in King of the Jungle, which does include a couple who, a lesbian couple. Another behavior, another need that directs our behavior is this need to belong. And so we want to think about, okay, why do we have this need? And it may go back to something as simple as the survival of the species. It could be more complex than that. Your book talks a lot about the effects, that what the behaviors are that result from that need. And so as you think about this and think about the related behavior in the movies, particularly in King of the Jungle, you can think about, are the effects I'm seeing consistent here? Is this generated? Is this need generated by a need for survival? Is there something which our scholarly knowledge is not accounting for here? So, within these ideas of motivation, we also can think about motivation in particular contexts and motivation at work. Freud talked about the healthy life is filled by love and work. Some of us don't really want the work part, but sometimes it's a necessity. And that could go back to Erickson's generativity versus stagnation ideas. But I'm bouncing all around now. Okay, so in terms of motivation at work, your book talks about Rosinski's theory that we have differing attitudes towards work, from it being a calling to it being a job. And then Chris Mihaly talked about the idea of flow, that deep engagement with our work, or we almost just lose track of all time and space. The characters in Miracle and 187 give us in particular some interesting examples of our behavior and motivation in these work settings, and give us a chance to think about, do we agree with these theories? Can we see examples of flow and of the results that we see coming out of it? One question in the workplace then is, how do we motivate achievement? Some people have an intrinsically high need to achieve. So, in terms of the dispositional characteristics we've talked about in attributions, it's just part of them. But industrial and organizational psychologists consider the situational factors which are related to achievement. And so, as you watch Miracle, among other movies, you might think about, okay, what's going on that is leading to this desire for achievement? Leadership style, in particular, is one factor related to achievement. Your book talks about task versus social leadership, which is an interesting lens to think about the characters in Over the Hedge and Miracle. Leadership and motivation could be related to, as we've highlighted here, biological, psychological, and social influences. There's some debate about other topics and where each of those plugs in. We'll pick up with that in the next video when we talk about intelligence.